Hello.
Hi, dear listeners.
Hi, dear listeners. Welcome to Say Smut, a literary podcast for readers and non-readers.
Sarah, and she loves books.
That's Hope, and she loves talking to me about books. And shocker, this episode, she actually read the book with me. So
I did it. There's so many more pages in this one than in Don Juan Velociraptor, y'all.
Welcome to part one of, or I guess part two of the Bridgerton special, where we are diving into Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, chapters 1 through 11.
Yes, if you are wondering where we left off, our last episode covers season 1 and 2 and books 1 and 2 of the Bridgerton series.
Yes, and next week we will be diving into the second half of the book right before season 3 comes out. And so we'll be doing, I think it's chapters 12 through 24, if I remember correctly. So if you're wanting to read along with us, that's great. If you're like, I don't read books, I just want to hear what happens in the book so I can kind of go in knowing the Easter eggs. What we talked about in the last episode, I'm going to reiterate, which is that we know this season the plot diverges completely. So don't worry about any spoilers from the book necessarily, because we already know that the producers are trying to extend the Lady Whistledown conversation. So This book is all about Lady Whistledown's identity and how it's going to be blown up, which, spoiler alert, Lady Whistledown is Penelope Featherington. And if you don't know that, we can't help you. So at this point, show watchers know that. Book readers do not know that going into this book, but you probably know it. I can't help you. I can't help you that I was spoiling it.
I will say right off the bat, I have never been so confused reading a book as I have been reading this one, because for context, I've read this book for this podcast. I have not read any other Bridgerton book. I have only seen the Netflix series, and I didn't realize until I started reading this book, and then we also started seeing trailers for this next season, that they're just a complete divergence in plot. And like, obviously, Sarah and I had talked about that when we covered the second season and the Viscount Who Loved Me. But I'm in a world of limbo where I don't know what's book real and what's show made up. And boy, was it confusing for this book specifically.
It sure is. So I don't want anybody to be like, I can't listen to this because I don't want the season to be spoiled. It's probably not going to be. Like,
I don't think so.
So you're fine. So we're going to jump right in to the prologue. And I'm going to go through kind of some of the events. We're going to kind of discuss some of the foreshadowing, maybe red herring moments that we see, some scenes we might want to see in the show. So we get a lot of context and information in the prologue. I doubt that we will ever get a flashback to the moment that Penelope and Colin first met, but I would love to see it.
Take it.
Because her bonnet flies off her head. She's like 16, 15. And her bonnet
flies off.
Her bonnet flies off her head in the park, and he's riding a horse. It hits him in the face, and it makes him fall off the horse. And she comes running over. She's obviously little wallflower Penelope Featherington, and she's so worried that she just like hit this man in the head, with her bonnet. And he's like laughing. And it's kind of the beginning, because so much time later, her and Eloise enter society together, and that's when they become friends, which is a little different than the show. But I would love to see this scene. I would
also love to see this scene. Yeah, but at least very much like he's gonna think I'm like a little frivolous idiot lady, and I got to keep control of my bonnet. It's gonna be so embarrassing, and he ends up being very nice about it and thinking it's funny. Which is great.
And we see a lot of layers to Penelope in the show, so I'm really curious because you see her obviously as like the kind of shy girl wallflower who's clearly smarter than her whole family, but also she's a good friend, but also she's Lady Whistledown, and she kind of has a whole nother like girl boss attitude when she was like talking to that printer, that one scene, like trying to wager him down a few pennies.
Yeah, we did not talk about this in our recap, but I think either recap, but there are some real boss bitch scenes where Penelope takes on what I think might be more of the actress's actual accent.
Yes, it is.
Goes full Irish and is just like haggling down this man to not have to pay a bunch of money for the printing. It's just like, I'm going to make you so much money. Just take my bargain. Bye.
Or like her interactions Yeah, or the interaction she has with like the modiste that she starts working with. Like she has like this girl boss attitude that she doesn't show to everybody else. And we're gonna get into how that's already kind of seen in the book. So we see a lot of layers to her. Everybody talks about the colors of her outfits. So just so you know, the prologue says that she wears yellow, orange, and red because, quote, yellow, Mrs. Featherington had decided, was a happy color, and a happy girl would snare a husband, end quote. Which is, I just wish that she would have said that out loud during the show at some point. I hope that we still hear it. Now, when the book references Penelope's first times mentioned in the Lady Whistledown column, it's in reference to the terrible clothing. And I have to imagine that this was her writing these entries in hopes that her mother would value Whistledown's opinion more than her daughter being like, please stop putting me in these colors. And then like, it's kind of one of those things that it's like, if you hear from somebody else, you'll take it more seriously.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, I've tried so hard to get my mom to put me in anything even remotely flattering, and she does not listen to me. But maybe if Lady Whistledown, who everybody loves, is like, Penelope looks like a fool in yellow and should wear literally anything else, like maybe she'll let me change colors, which even that doesn't really necessarily work for a long time.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And it isn't until her mom like completely takes her off the like marriage mart and she becomes like a spinster that she's allowed to dress in her own clothing. I also want to state for her appearance, if anybody needs a visual, they do say she loses a stone from her debut season to like when we're in current time. So she debuted at, I think, 17. And the current time that the book comes up to is when she's 28 as a spinster, which decrepit at that point, right?
So old at 28, said the 32-year-old.
Said the girl who's turning 28 in a month. Oops. So I just think it's interesting that at one point Cressida is being mean and says something about being like, even being 10 stone heavier is just unhealthy for a young girl. And so even though she loses a stone, she is still considered curvy for a woman in society. So I just want to make it clear, because if you have an old copy of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, let me see if I have it actually. An old copy of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. No, I don't have it. They would have these like inserts, like the old, like the ones you get like that are travel sized, that your grandma would have in her, bedside table. It would have like an insert of like a model page, and Penelope and Colin are in that page. And she looks very, very thin there. And I want to point out that we are still talking about a plus size woman. As a plus size woman, I love that we are still talking about a curvy woman. And we will get into how Colin loves this. So we get into, obviously she's into Colin and she's writing her name with his name in a little journal over and over again. And I'm not trying to psychoanalyze our girl, but putting things in writing on paper to express her emotions seems to be
she's really
something that we are clearly coming back to over and over again.
It's a pattern of behavior.
Yeah. So on my page 10, it's interesting that not only does she believe that she would be a spinster for life because no one is interested, but she also mentions it wouldn't be fair to be with a husband when she is so in love with Colin still, which I think is crazy levels of loyalty. And it just shows like her general character. She doesn't want to mislead a man into thinking she's going to be in love with him when she's clearly in love with Colin.
Right. Yeah. Really, Penelope's only goal at this point is like, my mom keeps making really threatening comments about how I'm going to take care of her when she's really, really old. And I just, as long as I can avoid that specific fate, it's fine.
Exactly.
I'm not trying to get married anymore. I'll just harbor my crush for the rest of my whole life.
Now we're going to get into the scene that I find the most interesting, which is in the book, she overhears Benedict, Anthony, and Colin speaking. And they're saying things about, Colin just came home from another trip abroad. And these brothers are talking about how he got summons to the house by mother. And he's weary that his mother's going to, tell him off about getting married again. And I guess like the last time she kind of got hyper fixated on Penelope. And so he says out of frustration, and I'm certainly not going to marry Penelope Featherington, which is a different wordage than what they use in the show. And I think that's very, very purposeful, because in the show, I have it on a whole nother part of my notes. This is so embarrassing. This is so embarrassing. What does he say? Do you have it?
Isn't it more like he won't court her?
Yes. It's something along the lines of, and I'll loop back to this when we do, I guess, the next part, but I will not court her. And if you read his story, it's technically true. He never courts her. He just marries her. So
like,
I think
alert.
Yeah, I think this is super purposeful that they change this wordage in the show to be more of a call to he won't court her. Like, you will marry her.
You simply won't watch them promenade or go to a horse race or watch a boxing match. They don't date like that.
But the best part of the scene is that they see that she overheard this and he's like quick to apologize. And she's like, I don't know. I never asked you to marry me though. Like,
yeah, I don't remember ever indicating that we should get married. More
also,
or less.
I don't know why you think I'd be offended by this. Because if I said that I would never marry, Benedict Bridgerton, would he be offended by that? And Benedict's like, no, because he's already a married man. He's like,
don't loop me into this also.
Yeah, please don't loop me into it. But it is so funny because she's just like, I don't see why that'd be offensive. It's like saying the grass is green. It's like saying the sky is blue. Like, everybody get over themselves. And then
does a bear shit in the woods?
Yeah. And there's this wonderful scene where Anthony ends up asking Penelope if he can walk her home and explains that Colin didn't mean it, which again, just shows so many dynamics I wish we had, because we just talked about how in the last book, Anthony came in to save Penelope from Cressida being mean and walks her into dinner. And the show, please give us these.
They would have to retcon the whole scene where this happens in season 2 to make this part where Anthony walks her home happen, because Colin doesn't know that Penelope hears him say this, and I don't think Anthony is present for it at all.
No.
I think he's actively dancing with Kate and they're being in love at that point.
I think they're thinking about having babies at that point.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Did anything else catch your eye in the prologue? Because it's kind of stuffed full of information.
Because my head, spoiler alert, when we find out later on who Lady Whistledown is, that didn't even strike me, because in my head, I was like, we all already know this. So my prologue notes are like, it looks like Penelope mentions that she's making a lot of money as Lady Whistledown. That's pretty awesome. We get a sense that we get the scene where Colin says he won't marry Penn. That's different.
That's different.
That's differently different from the show and how it happens. So that's mostly what, as I'm starting to get differences, that's sort of what I'm noticing, but not enough, because in my head this whole time I'm like, we all know she's Lady Whistledown.
Everybody in the world knows she's Lady Whistledown.
Everyone here knows what's happening. Let's dive in.
So let's go into chapter 1.
Yes.
She's 28 when this picks up, which is majorly significantly. So let's not forget, I say in my notes, that Kate was 22 and considered decrepit. And now here we are at 28. Colin, just for reference, is 33. He has come back from Greece and everybody is talking about it. Especially is he going to enter the marriage mark, which is in the previews. We know that he comes back from Greece. That's going to be shown. Mm-hmm. And there's some foreshadowing when Penelope and Eloise are talking about Whistledown, and Penelope says, quote, "She can't go on forever. Someone will eventually figure out who she is, don't you think?" She goes on to say, quote, "Eventually she'll make a mistake. She has to. She's only human." And at the same time, it almost sounds like she wants to get caught. Right?
Yeah. It's just fun. And again, in my head, I'm like, that must make Penelope feel so weird, because we all know she's Lady Whistledown. I wonder how she fakes it through all these. Obviously, the reality of the situation would be that when she and Eloise are having this conversation, in her head, she'd be like, wonder about that. But yeah, I just...
If you read this from a perspective of not knowing anything, you would be just as surprised, I think, when it comes time. Right?
I assume if you've had it's also funny too, because not knowing anything and not having the context from the previous books, but only having from the show, it's all small potatoes to me. But if you had only read the books and had not seen the show, then this would all be like, who is it? Who's Lady Whistledown? Ooh, interesting. I wonder who it'll be. And I just didn't have that context.
Yeah, and she's still inwardly and outwardly, obviously outwardly, but talks about Whistledown as if she's a whole nother entity.
Yeah.
And I love the point that she's making, which is eventually she'll make a mistake. She has to. She's only human. And that's what's going to make her slip up, which you will see in part 2 is exactly what happens.
We call that foreshadowing.
So after returning, Colin feels really restless and lost. Anthony is a Viscount, and at this point, Benedict is a major success as an artist. Mm-hmm. And Colin isn't sure where he lands, because we have to give men importance in life. Right. Men cannot be purposeless, apparently. And an ongoing theme. And upon his return, he has a conversation with Anthony in which Anthony calls him out and is like, quote, "If you were truly happy, you wouldn't keep leaving."
Got him.
Anthony be spitting truth now that he's wised up.
Yeah. And we do also know lightly from chapter 1 that Colin is open to getting married. Yeah. He's not rushing into it. But in this, as he's sort of wrestling with I don't really know what my purpose is. I don't have a title that I have to worry about Anthony, and Penelope is a mom, and she's not Penelope, excuse me, Daphne's a mom, and she's got the Duke of Hastings, and she's got her own thing. There's at least that kind of I guess I could get
but I'm wondering if there's a little element of that. I can't remember Benedict's book. This is just another proof of me not paying attention to Benedict ever
at all. Yeah, we just forget about him all the time.
But there's almost an element of this in the show for Benedict, right? Is that Benedict's I'm a second son. What the fuck do I have? I'll go to art school and I'll go on my own merits. And then he finds out his brother buys him into it, So this is where we're going to talk a lot about crossing storylines and giving them to other characters from the book to the show. And I think that this is one that we're probably going to see play out for Benedict more so than we do for Colin this season. So moving on to chapter 2. You ready for chapter 2?
Yes, I love chapter 2. It's one of my favorite parts of the book.
It's so fun. So we are now at a ball for Violet Bridgerton's birthday, which we will not name how old she is. And Lady Whistledown, being as wonderful as she is, refuses to publish how old a woman is.
Right. If your late 20s is decrepit, I can't fathom what it means if you're as old as Lady Bridgerton.
Yeah, but when your womb has done that much work, I think you earn a lot of respect in this community. So it's the first time you really get to see Colin and Penelope's chemistry.
Yeah.
I love it so much. And I'm going to be honest, it's the one time that you feel like they're on the same page until the end of the book, because they're so not on the same page after this.
True.
And I think what sparks the first time the author notes Colin's change is when a group of people is gathering around them and talking about how boring the season is. It's so trivial. It's blah, blah, blah. And then people keep saying, "Oh, I didn't see you there, Miss Featherington." And Colin keeps interrupting them and being like, "How did you not see her? She's right fucking there." And this is also going to be a theme of people just ignoring Penelope and Colin being like, "What the fuck are you talking about right now?"
It's really incredible. I love it. He's like, "Can you please? She's beautiful and wonderful." Wait, I feel that way?
Well, he says he interrupted somebody before saying it, essentially, quote, "before anyone else could tell Penelope how unremarkable they found her," end quote.
Just, he's so aghast about how people aren't observing her. And I honestly agree with him, because she's right there.
And you also see the dynamic between Lady Danbury and Penelope, which is, I'm going to talk a lot about how they mirror each other so wonderfully through this book. And I hope we get that in the season desperately, because even though Danbury has played so many important parts in the season, this is where is her standout time, other than when we get to Hyacinth's book, because Lady Danbury's grandson falls in love with Hyacinth. And so there's kind of a dynamic there. But this is the time that these two women are one and the same.
If I don't get my full fix of Lady Danbury in this season, I will riot, because my favorite quote is from her and in this chapter and in this book. And I think she's so funny and fun.
What is your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is when they're at this ball. Colin's like, "Lady Danbury, how nice to see you." And Lady Danbury's like, "Nobody ever thinks it's nice to see me." She said, except maybe my nephew, and half the time I'm not even sure about him, but thank you for lying all the same.
She is, I love her in the books. And I love that the actress, I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, the actress who plays her encompasses her so well, because there's so much grace to her, but she's still like, fucking talk your shit.
She's fiery
like,
and fun. I love her. I absolutely love her. So I want it to go down this way. I want her to be very to like have this friendship with Penelope that she has in the books, because it's my favorite part of the book.
And the chapter ends with Danbury being like, you know what we could fucking do to spice things up? I will give £1,000 to whoever can unmask Lady Whistledown. And it is hilarious to me because everybody is talking about Lady Whistledown, Lady Whistledown, blah, blah, blah. And it coincides with the scene where Penelope is continuing to be ignored.
Yep.
Like the parallels are not lost on me here.
Yeah, they're like, we don't even see you when we're approaching a circle of people that you're having a conversation with. So it couldn't be you.
Yes. So this seeps us into chapter 3. We're still in the same scene. And now everybody at the ball is talking about Lady Whistledown. I think they even say like it takes 4 minutes for the news to completely spread.
Travel across the ballroom. Like it starts in one part and then ends in another, and it doesn't take a long time.
Yes. And Lady Whistledown is Penelope is asking Colin for his theories about who is Lady Whistledown. And he's kind of playing coy, and we'll get into why later. But it says, quote, she'd had bet her life that he had a few suspicions, but for some reason he wasn't willing to share them with her. Now, they talk about how the friendship between him and her change over the season, or sorry, this episode as well. Season.
Yeah,
book is chapter, book. I don't know.
I'm so lost in the sauce at this point. It's hard to even distinguish anymore.
Who knows? We're trying to record these all in one sitting so that we can keep our thoughts together. Clearly not working. So in this book, it's like they're friends, but they become best friends on a level of like trust, not in behavior necessarily, but like trusting each other. And she's kind of, we'll get into later, like he gets upset that she even has secrets. Yeah. But in this moment, Penelope's like, why won't he even like spitball this with me? Like, yeah, why are you keeping this from me? Now, after Penelope has the balls to share that she suspects it's actually Lady Danbury.
Yeah, to her face. She's like, I think it's you.
She's like, you know what? I'm just going to say this. Lady Danbury says, I think the most important quote of the entire fucking book, which is...
I have it circled with a little star right here.
Would you like to read it for us?
I hope we're talking about the same quote, because it'll be weird if
it would be really weird if we weren't.
Lady Danbury's really impressed that Penelope has the balls to say this to her face, and kind of like leans over to her, and I'll just read it from the book. It says, isn't it nice, the older lady said, leaning in so that only Penelope could hear her words, to discover that we're not exactly what we thought we were?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Isn't it nice? And it's great because like she says that to Penelope, and Penelope really kind of carries it in her heart the rest of the season. She's like, maybe
the rest of the season. You mean
the rest of the season? And by that I mean the book, because we're talking about a book and not a show. Hope. I'm not used to reading the books. But yeah, she's like, yeah, maybe, remember, not exactly what we thought we were. I thought I was this lame wallflower, even though we don't know this yet. Been doing boss bitch shit.
But it's not only just her, but you're going to get to a point where we're going to talk about this deeper, but she also idolizes Colin so much in so many ways. And she thinks he's like the perfect hero of a man. He's suave, he's funny, he's charismatic, and like he could never have a mean bone in his body. And you find out that's very much not true. He's very human too. So you see these two characters also reflect each other perfectly, because it's also nice to discover that he's just a man. He's not everything she worked up in her brain for the last, 15 years that she's known him or whatever. So that was an over.
Yeah, in many ways, he's a big complainy baby.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. And why this is also one of my least favorite books in the Bridgerton series. But there's also an element of Lady Danbury's boldness that is reflected in Penelope and becomes almost like a voice of reason to Penelope to be bold herself.
Right.
And throughout the book, Lady Danbury will continuously kind of tell Penelope tidbits that compare them to one another that are like, I'm also like you, Penelope. I'm also like you. So Penelope starts seeing more of herself in Lady Danbury. And she's like, you know, I can be this bold too.
Yeah.
The chapter then has a break in it to the next day where Penelope is on her way to Lady Bridgerton's home. And sorry, did you have anything from the ball?
I loved the whole ball. I liked the premise of like, we're gonna find out who Lady Whistledown is, and I'll give you £1,000 because again, in my head, I'm like, that must really be making Penelope sweat because everyone, including me, who reads this book knows that she's Lady Whistledown.
Yes.
And Lady Danbury is my favorite, so I just love the whole thing because I just love her so much.
The whole fucking book, Lady Danbury, is just a hit.
Just
so
hilarious.
Colin catches Penelope outside of Lady Bridgerton's home. Just so you know, Lady Bridgerton Violet is no longer the Viscountess because Kate is the Viscountess. So now she moved out of the house. She has her own house. So Kate and Anthony have their house with their kids. That was the Bridgerton house. It's all a whole thing, right? Yeah. This is where we talk about like titles and who owns what and then whatever. Anyway.
I need a drawn map to know where everybody lives in this book.
I know. Everybody's like within 2 blocks distance of each other.
It's never super far from each other, I don't think.
So she's kind of like on a high after the last night's ball, and she's like skipping and like kind of singing to herself.
Maybe I'm not what I thought I was. Do.
Yeah, she's like having a whole singing in the rain moment.
Relatable.
And he is like, he teases her about this and like kind of says, you know, like maybe I should dance with you in the rain too, you know. And she points out, well, then people would think, well, we're courting. And he's about to fling off kind of another offhanded comment, and he stops. And this kind of quote stands out to me. There was something lurking deep in the brown depths of her eyes, some emotion he couldn't even begin to identify, an emotion he suspected he'd never even felt, end quote. What do you think this was? What emotion?
I would imagine attraction.
I want to believe like it is like he probably has never been in love. Like
I think that's true because we don't have this weird Marina engagement subplot.
Yes.
Which he thought, I mean, not that would really count because I think in the show, he's like, maybe these aren't real strong feelings anyway. But yeah, he hasn't really, what is this feeling?
Yeah, I think it's also, you know, she has gotten used to people understanding that her and Colin have a friendship, but like they will never date, like, right? Like they'll never get on that level. And so she's ready to kind of like for him to turn her down again. Like, and so I think she's like on the precipice of being like, please don't hurt me right now. And he has never had that feeling because we'll get into like, he's so popular. He's likable. He's never had a hard day in his life. Like he has this very nice life and he's never experienced that. So I like that quote because I think it's another moment where he realizes things are different and he's starting to notice things that are different.
Yeah.
In this scene, Colin calls her a quote, very nice girl, which a few chapters before Penelope called him a nice guy. And remember, isn't it nice to discover that we are not exactly what we thought we were?
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is like nice and perfect all the time.
Some people have alternate identities. Some
people write fanfic. No, I'm just kidding. During this conversation, she also says in her internal dialogue, quote, Penelope had a bad habit of trying to hear between the lines of people's conversations.
Which to me was perfectly normal because I already knew that.
Exactly. But if you didn't, but like what great foreshadowing.
If you didn't know.
This is just stocked full of moments of like foreshadow, one after another. So Colin is also known for being kind of the easy, breezy, charming guy. But by the end of the chapter, Penelope is reflecting on never seeing him truly angry. And she couldn't even imagine it. And this quote stood out to me as well. Quote, he'd have to be really, truly, profoundly upset to lose his temper. And that kind of fury could only be sparked by someone you really, truly, profoundly care about.
So that can't be me because he's never been upset in front of me or about me.
Yes, which we're going to find out about 50% of this book. That is exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, he's going to be really mad at you a lot.
He's going to be mad at you and for you a lot. And you're going to see a lot of anger from him. Does anything else stand out to you from this interaction?
I found it very relatable to want to dance in the street. I mean,
casually.
I loved that. Yeah. I did also like... I got very frustrated with how long I felt like it took Colin to realize his feelings. And so I didn't have a lot of patience for him as a character in this book when he was starting to realize that he liked Penelope. And I know this is where we started, but I was like, come on, dude. It's all right there.
There's so many points. I'm going to get into something in I can't remember if it's going to be in this part or the next part because I've done all this in one sweep. So I can't remember what's going to be in what parts. But we're going to get into him already acknowledging some of this about himself before he's willing to admit it. Because there's so many times where he's like, well, Penelope must have changed. Penelope must have changed. Penelope must have changed. I know I didn't do anything. I didn't change.
It's not that I'm just noticing her for the first time. It is funny to me in the scene where he's mad that everybody's like, oh, Penelope, I didn't see you there. Because like, it's not that he does it. Obviously, he acknowledges her and they have like a friendship and they talk and stuff. But like from the standpoint of the feeling she has for him and vice versa, he basically does the same thing to her all the time.
Yes.
He like doesn't see her as someone he would even fathom ever courting or hanging out with in more than a friend kind of way. And it's like,
I think like the greatest analogy I can use for this, and maybe it's a terrible analogy, but like there's an element of him having pity on her, and there's a part of him also having genuine feelings of friendship for her, and the hinges of the two are him caring for her. And so when it starts leaning from him like asking her to dance at balls, like going up and talking to her at balls, comes from a place of pity because he does care about her and he doesn't want to see her. But then through the book, specifically earlier on, he kind of starts realizing, no, I'm not doing this out of pity. And she still thinks he's doing it out of pity because she acknowledges that multiple times. It's like, I care about the Bridgertons. I like them, but I know that a lot of what you guys do socially is because you like me, but you also don't want to see me in this situation.
Right. Colin doesn't do a very good job of being like, or acting like it's for reasons other than pity the whole time. So she doesn't really have anything else.
Especially early on, which is why I hate this book so much, because I feel like Colin is so unlikable in the book.
Yeah.
So we are now in chapter 4, and in this chapter, they finally get into the fucking house during tea time. And something I would love to note, for people who did not read the books, Colin is always hungry or always eating. And it's hilarious. It's almost like every scene, if he is sitting in somebody's drawing room, he's got to be eating or food has to be on the way. And
he also always shows up, and is like, I'm starving. Did you bring the food? And there was like, of course you brought the food. You always have to have the food. You're the hungriest guy on the planet. We know. We get it. Like, you're so hungry all the time.
They have to incorporate this in the season. If they don't, it'll be devastating to me because it is hilarious.
Make Colin hungrier. I don't want it.
I can't relate to anything else. The family is talking about journaling, and Kate asks Penelope if she keeps a journal, which is so hilarious because she says back, quote, "I'm afraid not. It requires far too much discipline for me." As if running a popular publication anonymously is less discipline. And in my head, I'm like, obviously she said that to throw them off the fact that she's Lady Whistledown. The fact that, again, I'm pretty sure we all know. Yeah, exactly.
As a reader, you don't. And so yeah, I was just like, she had to lie like that. Of course she lied like that. Duh, we all know.
So after discussing Lady Whistledown, Eloise makes a comment about being happy as like being an old maid, and Penelope's happy about being an old maid too. And in this moment, we kind of see the stark difference between the Bridgertons and other people like Penelope, because Eloise had 6 marriage proposals and she turned them all down, which means she essentially chose to be a spinster.
Right.
And Penelope never had a marriage proposal.
Oh, Penelope would love to be like, I'm really into this because it's actively what I want, and definitely not because it's what I've resigned myself to, because no one has showed interest in me. Like,
so it's the glory of being a Bridgerton, which we talk about a lot in this book, is they can do things out of choice. They're popular. People like them. They're beautiful.
Right.
They have money. Like, and a lot of other people don't have those options, and they don't understand the privileges that they have.
Penelope is embracing this because she feels like she has to, and Eloise is doing this because she wants to.
Exactly.
It's totally not the same.
Exactly. So chapter 5, it's now been a couple of days, and Penelope goes to number 5, which is what they call Lady Bridgerton's house.
Mambo number 5.
Now I can't think of how the song goes, but I was gonna, for copyright issues, I probably shouldn't sing it.
Bit of Eloise in your, a little bit of Penelope.
So unfortunately, she goes there to meet up with Eloise, and unfortunately, they're not home yet. So she's allowed to go upstairs in the house to like the family's exclusive drawing room, which is kind of like she explains later, well, I'm allowed in here because the Bridgertons allow me in here.
Yeah, she's got that VIP access. Yeah. And also said she's not, someone that anyone thinks any Bridgerton male is going to try and court. She doesn't have to really worry about where she goes in this house. She can just be wherever she wants.
I will point out some of the alone scenes that we get in this book. Anyway, and it's just another emphasis of no one seeing Penelope as the quote unquote threat that she is.
If some of these scenes had happened to other characters in other books, they would be forced to marry immediately.
Exactly.
They'd be in so much trouble.
So she's up in that drawing room, and she finds an open journal to find written entries about Cyprus, Greece. And it has to be Colin's writing. And this is where I go
to Greece.
This is where I go on a tangent about how two writers should never date each other, in my humble opinion. The tortured poets department. No, I'm kidding. But the entry talks about the birthplace of Aphrodite, which is Cyprus. And I want to believe that after Colin travels to all these gorgeous places, the last one he sees before coming home and falling in love is Cyprus, the home of Aphrodite.
Well,
we're going to get into another little goddess comment he makes later, which emphasizes his love of goddesses. But more importantly, he talks about how stunning Cyprus is, and how the people who live there couldn't possibly comprehend its beauty because it's what they see and what they primarily know every single day.
Yeah, how frustrating, Colin.
And he finishes with, quote, "Can anyone appreciate perfection when it is a constant in one's life?" End quote.
You can't see him. My eyes are just big and like, right, Colin, right now?
Right, Colin?
Isn't that right, Colin? Interesting that you say that, Colin.
How about making the fucking point before you realize the fucking point, my dude?
Why don't you try looking in a mirror, Colin?
Literally, Colin.
Why don't you try looking in a wink?
Wink, wink. We'll get into that later.
Maybe he will. Let's find out.
So Colin obviously walks in on her reading this journal, and this is the first time he's genuinely furious.
He's mad.
He like gathers his things to stomp out of the room like a little baby, and he cuts his hand with a letter opener, and she like assists with the injury, and it kind of like breaks the ice after he gets pissed off, which by the way, it has been confirmed that this injury scene is in the show.
Ooh, yay.
It is that we have a still from the moment, which is like he's sitting and he's got his like hand out, and she's like kind of kneeling in front of him, and she's like helping with his hand. Anyway, just wanted to let you know that this is there.
Yeah, little sneaky handhold.
All of a sudden he notices like how clever she is and how big her eyes are, and like
what big teeth she has,
and what big my grandma, what big teeth you have. But
amazing.
We now see how much of a stupid little bitch Colin is.
How much of a stupid little bitch Colin.
I want you guys to know that this podcast is a Colin slander podcast, but only for book Colin. I hope and pray that show Colin will be much better.
Yeah, we will issue an apology to show Colin for how much we hated his inspiration if he turns out okay.
Yes. Penelope goes on to compliment his writing, which, like, of course, like, makes him like peacock a little bit.
Like, ooh.
And the things she's saying is so detailed and insightful that, like, maybe somebody could say that commentary is coming from somebody who reads a lot, but also would make sense because she's been writing a societal column
Very
for 10
financially
years.
successful societal column. But whatever.
Tell me what you think of this scene. Do you hate it as much as I do?
Yeah, the Colin, it just kind of annoys me.
This is the beginning of the end for Colin for me.
Yeah, he doesn't get less annoying for a while.
Yes,
in this book, and it kind of starts here, and that was my biggest takeaway. It was like I start getting a bit of a Colin ick that doesn't subside till later.
Yes, exactly. As we seep into chapter 6, we're still in this scene, and like he is so desperate for affirmation and compliments from Penelope, but internally he's also like, and this is where he continues to kind of like be rude towards her too, because he's like, I can't believe I'm hanging on to the praise of Penelope Featherington of all people. But I'm like, of course, she's your fucking friend, dude. Like, okay, like. Also, I would take a compliment from anybody. I'm going to be honest, literally anybody.
I love compliments.
I fucking love compliments.
Send us some in the reviews.
Yes. And at this moment, this is where we become enemies to the lovers and you write a nice review. No.
Yes, you hated us before, but once you listen to this episode, you're going to be so into it.
He goes on and starts being the whiniest bitch about not having a purpose in life, which is totally fine. But then follows up with being like, Lady Whistledown is too nice to me, and everybody just likes me, and everybody just thinks I'm so popular and good looking, and
it sucks to be considered hot and cool.
Yeah, but he boils this down to like, everybody thinks I'm an airhead charmer, and like I have no substance, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
So
annoying. I can't. Yeah. And thank God for Penelope. Literally, if she would have fallen into the trap of like babying him in this moment, I probably would have quit the book when I first read them. But she calls him out for being super whiny and is about to like have like, she's trying to be like, I have never faced the problems you have faced. Like,
right.
These problems do not exist.
These are mostly non-issues.
Yeah. And this quote is the best, which is, quote, the world is your oyster, Colin. You're young, wealthy, and you're a man. You can do anything you want.
I mean,
my girl. Snaps all around.
Good for her.
Not only does the scene kind of give the ick to Penelope, which I wish that we would dive more into the scenes where Penelope's like, oh, this is not the man I liked. Oh, this is not what I liked.
Right. I don't know how this can be incorporated into the show, given what we know the premise of the show is going to be.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I think he's going to show a lot of jealousy. I think that could be the anger elements. Is like him and like not, and that's where it's like, I know that some people like jealousy and romance books and stuff because it like shows affection and caring. But like at the same point on a rational level,
yeah, that's not my jam.
Jealousy, first of all, if you're with a partner, shows lack of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And jealousy also shows that you could fucking do something about this and make it a non-jealous point.
Yeah, just do something about your feelings.
Be with her.
Just do it. I'm so tired.
Colin, I'm so fucking tired.
I'm so tired. You have feelings, do it. Just go.
But so not only does Penelope kind of get the ick, but like Colin realizes, I'm actually really desperate for her approval and her friendship because I don't want us to fight right now. But I also like really want her to tell us how good we are. So I'm like, oh, how the turns have tabled.
Oh, how the turns have tabled.
Like, oh my dude, how you are desperate for her. And she is like, ick.
Yeah. When someone is finally to him, like you can chill.
Yes. Yes. And while Colin is kind of pondering this argument, he recalls the day he said he wouldn't marry Penelope in front of his brothers. And it's interesting because he claims that he didn't believe that Penelope fancied him any more than any other girl at the time. So not necessarily that she didn't like him, just like that he thought he was charming and nice. Like so I'm like, are you that oblivious? And the answer is yes.
Men are so annoying.
Colin is so fucking annoying.
So annoying.
Before we head to the pinnacle of the season, which is the Smythe musical, would you like to add anything?
No, I'm so excited to get to the hottest musical ticket of the year.
As is important with Colin's eating habits, the other kind of nest egg of this series is the annual Smythe Smith musical, which is iconic to be known from. They are a very wealthy and well-done family, but they are not musical at all.
Just ass at music.
And each time people come to this event, because either they're trying to support the family or they're like, we're here for, you know, the food and drinks, and never for the music, because the music is terrible, right? No. So I just love this little piece of lore, and there is a spin-off book series about this family. So.
The canonically bad at music, possibly tone deaf.
Yes. So Penelope is telling her sister Felicity, they are sitting kind of close to the front, and they're like, we're going to be extra kind toward these, you know, towards these performers. And it's clear that like some of them who are performing think that they're good at music.
Yeah.
But, like, it's clear that like one girl in the corner is like, don't fucking make me do this.
Right. Which is the worst, because she's like, this one girl knows it's bad.
Yes.
She's like, I hate this. I'm not under the impression that this is a good time for anybody, but the other family members are like, I fucking rule at music. Listen to this jam.
It's like the scene in Barbie where he's like, can I play at you for, you know, can I sing at you? It's like that moment.
Which, as someone who has literally had that happen to them before, is a really tough position to be in.
That's devastating. I will note that later on, because there's each chapter begins with Lady Whistledown entries. Later in one of the other chapters, it said that Lady Danbury accidentally hit over one of that girl who was miserable, her violin, and destroyed it. And then was like, you know what? I'll buy you a brand new one, but like only the best of the best. Yeah, but that means it has to be like imported, and it's not going to be here for like
unfortunately
6 months.
It's going to be a long time, unfortunately. But I absolutely insist that you have to play this one and don't get another one.
Please don't get another one. And I'm so sorry you're not going to be able to play music for 6 months.
Yeah.
But maybe it's best for everyone.
Absolutely smashes a violin with her cane. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh no. So Penelope is telling, you know, hey, we're going to be nice. And Felicity's kind of whining. Because Felicity at this point, which by the way, Felicity's not in the show, but she is Penelope's youngest sister. She's the same age as Hyacinth. And so I think they're about 17-ish, 18-ish. They're about to go in society or are in society. And a few minutes later, Lady Danbury comes up and says like, you know what? Lady Whistledown's not going to write negatively about this musical because she's got a soft heart. And in truth, I think this is Penelope's hope that like Lady Whistledown will be kind of like a Robin Hood figure, right? Like dishing out to the terrible members of the town and protecting the innocent. And this is what she does for fellow wallflowers, for people who like are just being cruel to be cruel. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it's interesting because then in this moment where Lady Danbury claims that she thinks Penelope could be capable of being Lady Whistledown, after some teasing about this, Danbury doubles down by saying if Whistledown was someone obvious, then they would have discovered her by now. It has to be somebody who's like under the radar. So
and me, who is under the impression we all know the whole time that it's Penelope, is like, obviously, there's nothing new about this revelation.
But this is another really great scene between Penelope and Danbury. You know, like
I love Lady Danbury,
where she's being like, "Yeah, I used to be that girl too, who's like hating her life over there and trying to adhere to the Ton's needs." Right. So the women are interrupted by Colin.
Colin. I'm so mad at you, Colin.
Which annoys the shit out of Penelope. And after a horrible concert, they get to talk. And they both kind of apologize, but I really like don't think Penelope has anything to apologize for.
What, explaining the realities of the situation?
She apologized for storming out on him. And I'm like,
for not coddling a grown man.
Girl, he's 3 and 30.
3 and 30, which is 1 year older than me. And 30.
Yeah, he should be fucking apologizing. But Penelope actually suggests that he should publish his work, and he kind of blows it off, but then is like internally, he's like, Oh yeah, that would be actually really fun.
She likes my writing. Maybe that could be my purpose. Maybe not.
Yes, and they get back to kind of their regular banter again. And this is why like this book is so hot and cold.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it is a true friendship. They show us a friendship until they're assholes, but like that's fine. We'll get into it. Anything about the Smythe Smith musical?
I like that the whole time Penelope is like, someone has to sit up front and smile at these poor these poor kids who are bad at music and have to play music.
It's like she's doing a charity.
Yeah, she's like, we are sitting in the front row because if we don't, some asshole will, and they're gonna make mean faces and say, like Cressida Cowper, who's not Cressida Cowper because she's married.
But no, she's widowed technically.
Or widowed, sorry.
Because she married an old guy and he died and she got, she's broke. But
all of that to say they're like, Cressida's going to sit here and be a dick if we don't sit here up front and be nice for these people. So we're sitting up front, we're being nice to these people.
Yes. Chapter 8 begins with Penelope getting a knock on her door, her bedroom door, a couple of days after the musical, to be told by her butler that Colin has come to the house to call on her. And while it is known that Penelope is a welcome member of the Bridgerton house, no Bridgerton is going to the Featherington house. So this is so rare. She also makes sure that there's food prepared for him because he is hungry.
You have to.
And he came to tell her that the reason he's kind of been blasé about Lady Whistledown theories is because he thinks it's his sister Eloise.
I do think it's funny that he can't be bothered to make up literally any like you can think it's Eloise in your heart, but then pretend you think it's someone else. That's what pretty much everyone else is doing.
Yeah. So he claims she's always writing things down, has ink stains constantly on her hands. She's locks herself in her room for hours to write. And she is not Lady Whistledown, actually. But it is teasing to her book. And they actually have already made reference to something about this in the show, where at one point, I can't remember which character turns to her and is like, why do you have ink stains on your arms and like hands and stuff? And so it was kind of like in the heat of Queen Charlotte trying to figure out if she was Lady Whistledown and stuff. But therefore, like, Colin isn't completely wrong that she has a secret, just not the right one.
Yeah, it's a different secret.
He does point out something important, which is that if somebody is ousted as Lady Whistledown, they will have a massive scandal on their hands and likely be ousted from society for all that they've written about, which he's freaking out because he thinks that this is Eloise, right?
It's going to ruin Eloise, who is not yet married.
Yeah. Like this is, which if you're counting with us, that means Eloise is also like on the shelf. She's 28-ish too. So like her prospects of getting married at this point are very minimal, but it's still the Bridgerton name, right?
Hyacinth hasn't married anybody yet at this point, right?
Yeah, Hyacinth is going to be fucked.
Yeah, completely screwed.
Gregory's going to be fucked, but Gregory's going to be fine.
It matters less for Gregory than it does for the woman who needs to be married, but still.
I'm trying to think. Francesca, I don't know. At this point, Francesca is widowed. So she was married for a year and then her husband unexpectedly died. So she's not trying to get remarried, so she's fine. Well, she does get remarried. No, her book's the best because it's the spiciest in my opinion. And also Michael is by far the best love interest of the entire fucking series. Ooh, I'll get into that at another time and date. But so Colin tries to explain the magnitude of speaking gossip, whether it is true or not, by using the example that he's like, if I told everybody I was seducing you, like, he's like, it doesn't matter if we've never kissed, it'll go haywire. And she's kind of like,
I love that that's the example he uses.
Yeah,
well, it would be if I don't know, just throwing this out here. If everybody that we made out,
if I just like put it up your butt and like we just start going ham. No, I'm kidding. I just feel like we needed a raunchy moment. No, but he's like, it doesn't matter. Like it'll spread like wildfire. It doesn't matter what the truth is. People will say what they say. Yeah. And however, it is not lost on me that the number of times these two have danced in society and talked at balls, and he has held her hands and also been alone and unchaperoned a couple times And still no one has said a fucking word about these two being together.
I'm starting to think that people cannot actually see Penelope.
I think she's a ghost.
She might be
a paranormal romance.
You didn't know this was going to be a fun, freaky paranormal romance book. Surprise! Penelope's been a ghost the whole time.
That's the big reveal, not Lady Whistledown.
No, the real secret.
I think he makes sense with what he's saying, but it matters who the integrity of the person and their reputation is as well, right? Because they've done a lot of by the way, in the show, first season, Anthony makes a comment that's like, well, so-and-so danced with so-and-so. And like, then somebody says, well, Colin dances with Penelope every single ball. And they're like, yeah, but that's Penelope Featherington. And it's
like, literally nobody reads into that.
No one reads into it.
It's funny. Not even Colin.
But the point he's making about gossip goes out the window because after he says the seducing comment, he just starts thinking about kissing Penelope.
Yeah, it's like, I've really lost the plot because I thought about being hot with you and now I would like to maybe be hot with you.
He's like, actually, now that I mentioned it.
Wait, what a great idea.
And he's like drunk with the realization of this. But then actually, it's Penelope that ends the chapter by asking, would you kiss me? Like not a like, would you, yes or no, but like, will you kiss me right now?
Yeah, like right now.
And the ninth chapter starts with her explaining why she's requesting it. She's like, it's like that scene from 2005 Pride and Prejudice, aka my favorite movie. I'm 27. I have no prospects. And like, she's literally like, I'm 28. I am an old maid. I do not want to die without being kissed. Like, I get it, girl.
I get it.
And
it bums me out, but I get it.
She's like, I promise it won't mean anything. Which, girl,
it never does.
We've been to this movie before. We've seen the ending.
I've read this book so many times.
I have seen this coming. And he's like, this isn't a good idea because I actually want to kiss her. And I just came to the realization I haven't had time to cope with that yet.
He's like, oh shit. I want to kiss her.
I need like 3 to 5 business days before I can process this information and be able to give you an actual answer.
Time for me to feel some feelings by myself for a little bit.
Exactly. So he looks at her and his internal dialogue says, quote, she was a siren, a goddess. And he wondered how on earth no one had ever noticed this before. Hello, Aphrodite?
Hello, sirens again?
Little goddess girl?
Greece?
Euros? Mamma Mia?
Here we go again.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the kiss starts like soft and slow, and then Colin's like ramping it up, and he's like getting super into it, and she's just standing there.
I mean, and in fairness, it's our first kiss, so.
Okay, and she'll talk later about their next kiss because, spoiler alert, there is another one. But she does say something along the lines of like, I was going to be a passive participant that time, but now I'm going to be an active participant. Yeah. I do love this quote because we love curvy women. Quote, she was soft, curvy, and lush, just as he'd always thought a woman should be.
Exactly. Exactly.
I like you again, Colin. Another point for you.
So hot and cold on Colin.
I know. Podcast. So then, like I said, she's not really reacting, and she's just kind of standing there. And he stops and looks at her, acknowledging how beautiful she is, before saying, "You can kiss me too." And she asks,
just stand there.
She asks, "What do I do?" And he says, "Whatever you want to." And then she just like touches his face and says, "Thank you." This pisses him the fuck off. He's like
so weirdly upset about this.
He's
also
so mad. And she's like, to be fair, she's trying to draw a hard line where she's like, I told you this wouldn't mean anything. I asked for a kiss. You delivered. Here, we're done. And he's like, this wasn't some pity thing.
Right.
But also, like, how is she supposed to fucking know that?
I didn't expressly state that I wanted to do this. You asked me if I would kiss you, and I did. And I'm mad that you didn't just read my mind about the feelings I've been feeling and not processing.
And it's like it took away all of the passion he had just felt for the last 3 pages over this. Like, I think he just felt deflated because he was like, I felt all these things. He even says at like one point, like, I don't think I've ever really kissed anybody until this moment. Like, this is a real kiss. This is the first time I've done it with this much feeling, which he's supposed to be a little bit of a rake, yada, yada. They're all rakes.
Guys just get to do that in society at this time for whatever.
Also, I'm really tired of just making everybody a rake. It's just done. Like, I'm done.
Quit rake shaming everybody.
And I'm going to note now that this is the second angry scene for Colin. And it is also the second time that they part on bad terms.
Yeah, we're doing this again.
And I want to start taking shots every single time Colin's mad. So at this time, unless you are driving, please take out your bottles of vodka. No, I'm just kidding. I am sober now. So anyway, the chapter ends with Colin going and confronting Eloise. Colin becomes like an agent of chaos.
And he's like, I'm so furious for reasons I've not made plain to absolutely anybody, and I'm going to take it out on absolutely everybody.
He's like, I don't know how to cope with any emotions right now, so I'm just going to go be as chaotic in nature as I possibly can. And he really, over a lot of chapters here in the middle, he becomes like not himself, like not the like cheery, go lucky kind of guy that he typically is. He's kind of like angry and like snarky and like...
He's like, I'm in a bad mood, and everyone notices that I'm in a bad mood, and they're like, why are you so mad? And I'm like,
I can't express my feelings. But he confronts Eloise about being Lady Whistledown, and he just gets fucking roasted for it.
She's like, you dumbass.
And I'm going to be honest, they start kind of having a feud over it. Like, him and Eloise, like, kind of get into it, and they really don't resolve it a whole lot. And Eloise is going to run away in at the end of the book. Yeah. So we'll get into that later.
We'll get into that next episode.
Yeah. So chapter 10. Do you have any feelings? Sorry, first of all, do you have any feelings about the kiss?
Oh, I thought it was funny. I mean, I have to remember that Penelope has not kissed anybody ever. Yeah. So like her actions in this are completely normal. She's like, I'll just stand here. I don't.
But I do think because I was thinking about this too, this whole idea of like the whole virgin, innocent women. Mm-hmm. And that's why I like Francesca's book too, is because her romance, she is a widow. So she had romance before,
right?
And she understands how this goes.
Right. And the first woman to not understand how baby making works.
Exactly. But I have to believe that because like Penelope is so insightful and so cunning that I have to imagine that, especially with her getting all this gossip and kind of having more perspective of the world in that way, even from her little place in London, she has to know a lot more, right?
I think we could argue, let's see if I can find it in my book, that she absolutely does, because she's read romance books before.
Oh yeah, the bitch is so skilled. She knows exactly what she's doing.
She knows what's going on. And I don't remember which chapter this is. I think it's in the second one. It is, because it's honestly across the page from my quote about Lady Danbury that I love so much. She's literally talks about how she thinks Colin is insufferable, but she wasn't going to say so because it would only make her sound like a character in a very bad romance novel. She'd read one just the other day in which the heroine used the word or one of its synonyms on every other page. So like she I don't know what romance novels were like back then. Probably not as good as, say, I don't know, Don Juan Velociraptor. But
no, absolutely not.
But maybe.
But I have to I just think that she's probably, I know she's not worldly to the extent of like travel and stuff, but I understand she's like way more cunning and like smarter than people realize. And I think she, especially being on the shelf and being a wallflower, she probably kind of disassociates and like understands how things work a little bit better than like people like, I don't know, Daphne Bridgerton.
I'll also go on a limb and say if my big crush kissed me, I don't know what I would do about it right now. So
yeah. Even though like I asked him on a limb, and it just, I guess he said yes. Like,
I didn't expect him to say yes.
So we're gonna go into chapter 10, where Lady Whistledown breaks the news that she will be retiring.
Which is so funny because technically she did say earlier that if Colin and Penelope got together, she would quit writing, but the people don't actually know that that happened.
I was going to mention that in the next part.
But
proof
that I read the book this time.
Proof that you read the book. But everybody's in chaos. They're in the midst of the ball that they're at. Lady Danbury calls out Penelope's feelings for Colin, by the way, and kind of like gives her encouragement. And internally, Penelope says, quote, "There was something oddly sweet about the old lady's faith in her, as if men like Colin fell in love with women like Penelope on a regular basis."
As if whiny, sad men didn't fall in love with bad bitch women like Penelope on a regular basis. I said it.
Amazing. No, but I think like Lady Danbury sees it all in her. She's like, I see you're the whole package.
It's like, I, unlike everybody else at every ball ever, see you with my eyeballs and see you with Colin with my eyeballs.
And yeah, I see you. Like, I don't see through you.
Yes,
you're not a ghost.
We are anyway.
We are present.
She's like, I'm trying to think of the equipment they use on ghost hunters. I've got my little dowsing rods. Yes. And I can sense your presence.
We're communicating. So while Lady Danbury is talking to Penelope, she asks her if she is happy. And Penelope kind of reflects on her life and realizes she could be doing a lot worse. She doesn't have like amazing family members, but like they're good. They love her and she's got good friends, which is really humbling after Colin complained about literally everything under the sun earlier.
About being too hot and too fun to other people.
Yeah, literally. Penelope reflects on a time she attended a masquerade ball and got to be, quote, free of the burden of being Penelope Featherington. She was so much more confident. She was like having a blast all night. She was flirting even. And I just like wonder if this is how she views her like Lady Whistledown side, right?
Yeah.
I
would think so, because Lady Whistledown gets to do all the things that Penelope as a person doesn't, just kind of, I don't know, being not observed and on the sideline versus saying exactly what you think about everybody to everybody and getting attention for it and being well loved for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, like, she holds the most power technically.
True.
in the town. And her internal dialogue really dives into this idea that she set her fate a long time ago with being in her debut season as a wallflower and being awkward. And she kind of cements the idea that first impressions and impressions in general matter, right? Because like at any time, we talk about who changed. Was it Colin? Was it Penelope? And at the end of the day, Penelope probably did change. And being a spinster and having like the pressure of the marriage mart off her back and being able to have Lady Whistledown, she's probably changed, but the Ton doesn't see that side of her. They are interrupted because Cressida, who is now broke and a widow, makes an announcement that she is in fact Lady Whistledown.
I laughed. I laughed because I already knew she wasn't Lady Whistledown, so there was no world in which I would think maybe she was.
No, I think when I read it the first time, I knew she wasn't Lady Whistledown, but I thought that was going to change the trajectory of the entire plot. I did not know that the plot was still going to go, because I was like, oh no, now everyone's going to think, and like immediately we start with chapter 11 being like, Lady Danbury's like, nah.
Like, not no. This is maybe we'll share this, but I have put together a very professional book report of this book, and my favorite parts are every time Cressida gets shit on. So the first time is in this episode when they're at the Maxfield ball. I don't know how that's pronounced. Yeah. And then she's just like, I'm Lady Whistledown. And Lady Danbury just kind of like, wow, the fuck you are. Give me some proof and maybe I'll give you money. Nobody believes it's you.
Yeah.
And I drew it, and the drawing is very good.
The drawing's excellent, and I will share it on our social media. I want to take a step back because chapter 11 starts with Colin, like only a few minutes before, kind of explaining how he's walking up to this situation and explaining that he doesn't know how to deal with his feelings, obviously. And he's realizing something has changed. Either Penelope has changed or he has, but he's really likely to blame it on Penelope. He like does not want to take ownership of it.
Couldn't be my fault.
So then diving back into the moment, Danbury immediately calls Cressida's bullshit. Penelope's like sick to her stomach, and like everyone's like, Penelope, you okay? You okay? You okay, girl?
Why are you so upset, Penelope? Any reason in particular?
Yeah. Something bothering you there, girl? And I can't imagine what she's thinking, you know, in this moment of like, oh, and we're gonna get into why the difference in views between Colin, how Colin views the burden of Lady Whistledown versus Penelope being like, this is my life's work.
Yeah, this is my greatest.
This is my greatest accomplishment.
At this point, only I know.
Only Hope knows that she's Lady Whistledown.
I have known that Penelope has been Whistledown the entire time. So I was unsurprised at Penelope's reaction because, like, obviously when you're essentially your bully comes out and is like, I did this incredible work, that would make you feel absolutely fucking crazy.
Yes. And when confronted between Cressida and Danbury comes to a head, the confrontation between them, Lady D asks Penelope if she thinks Cressida is Lady Whistledown. And Penelope changes in this moment, like takes on a whole persona and confidence that like Colin's like having a seizure over. Yeah. And
she did change. She changed the whole time.
She says, quote, I've always liked Lady Whistledown, and it would break my heart if she turned out to be someone like Lady Twombly. I don't know if that's how you say it.
I think it is. Keep that in your brain pocket for later.
Yeah. Copy and paste that for later on for the next episode. Mm-hmm. I want to note here that we do, like I said, we see a lot of versions of Penelope. We're going to see another one. Here's another one. But Lady Danbury ends the chapter by deciding she needs proof that Cressida is who she is, and she needs to deliver it. So that is where we're going to close this episode. Mm-hmm. Make sure you join us next week as we finish Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. You can find us, if you so choose, on TikTok and Instagram at Say Smut Podcast. Additionally, we'd love to hear your book recommendations. Send those our way via email at saysmutpodcast@gmail.com. Also, pop us a rating. Let us know how we're doing. Give us our annual review. Mm-hmm. That'd be great.
Kiss us back if you want to.
Kiss us back. You don't have to be passive.
If you want to, though.
Yeah, just if you want to. But for now, dear listener, we will stay smutty and see you next time. Bye-bye.